Welcome back to Smok'n Jay's Garage. Let's answer the age-old question today. Thrust vectors or Cobra fins, which one is better? And why? Well, first, why would you even want either one? Now, if you're not already familiar with them, they enhance your low-speed steering. The thrust vectors lift up out of the water at approximately 8 to 9 miles per hour. They offer no additional help at planing speeds, but they lift up out of the way, don't offer any drag, and they're out of the way. The Cobra fins, one side is longer, it's going to stay in the water at plane. It is going to potentially, we're going to find out, offer you a little bit more stability and a little bit more steering at planing speeds. So let's take a look at how each one of them looks. Got a couple of things here to show you. Let me pop you out of there, all right? So we have the thrust vectors on one side. Get you a look at how the thrust vectors look. And on the other side, we have the Cobra fins. Now this is the one that's going to be in the water when you are, well, they're both going to be in the water when you are going slow, and when you get up on plane, this is the one that is going to remain in the water and is going to enhance your high-speed steering as well, while the thrust vectors are spring-loaded. They have a little ski on the bottom here, and the water is going to push them up and move them out of the way. Again, that happens at approximately 8 to 9 miles per hour. So let me show you one other thing that I think might be important, and let's take a look at those fins individually. So we have the big Cobra fin, we have the big thrust vector fin. If you match these up as best as we can, and you take a look at, you can line those holes up, you take a look at the size, you can see that there's a lot more to the thrust vector on the bottom, while the Cobra fin on the top has a little bit more. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind. On a twin engine, I don't think this is going to matter at all. But on a single engine, where you're mounted a lot lower, the thrust vector sticks down below the bottom of the boat. Now, again, it is spring-loaded and moves out of the way. But it could potentially be the lowest part on your boat, versus the Cobra fin is a little bit shorter, and on a single engine, it will not be the lowest thing on the boat. The boat will you know, the bottom of the hull will be underneath it. So no potential for hitting it if you were to bottom out your boat. So just something to keep in mind that way. We're going to get out on the water and we're going to start testing them. A couple of things that I will mention too, though. Because I took my thrust vectors off in order to put the Cobra fins on, a couple of things that you're going to want if you are going to make the switch. There is a little tiny spacer that goes inside of the reverse bucket hole, and you need to replace this, versus if you take a look at the thrust vector, there is, this one's actually a little bit stuck, but there's a large collar on there. It takes the place of that little one, and then they use a plastic collar to go over the top of that to make it larger, and it's just one piece. It takes the place of both of those, whereas on the, where did I do with it? Right here. On the Cobra fin, you reuse the original Yamaha one that fits in there, and then they have their own, these washers don't go in this order, but you've got the larger one that separates it out farther, gets it on the outside of the reverse bucket, gets it out there. So you will need to retain this original one if you are putting them on, or acquire this one if you are switching, because you don't use this on the thrust vectors. You do, however, use it on the Cobra fins. One subtle difference that I'd like to add, while both brands require that the stock anode, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, anode, require you to relocate them. Both include the relocation brackets and bolts, but the thrust vectors relocate it straight back from its original location, which was originally right here. And the Cobra fins offer an angled bracket. So if you're looking at it straight on, you can see it's angled, versus if you are looking at this one straight on, it is straight backwards. I don't know if that is going to provide any, other than looks, is it going to make one work better than the other? I don't know, but just a difference to notice. Just a few things that I want to add before we get out on the water. First of all, this video is not sponsored by either one of these companies. I bought the Cobra Fins during a pre-sale from Jetboat Pilot. I also bought the lateral thrusters, which I am pulling out to test out the Cobra Fins. But both of these I bought in different years at a pre-sale. So there was a discount on that, and then Jetboat Pilot offers a 10% military discount, which I took advantage of. The Cobra Fins, Jeff has sent these on loan to me with the option to buy them at half price if I like them. So thank you to both of them, but both of these are costing me money, so neither one of them are sponsoring this video, and I can say whatever I want about them. That being said, Will or Jeff, and Jeff, if you are watching this and I say anything factually incorrect about your product, feel free to correct me in the comments. I will pin that comment to the top of the comments for everybody else to see. Aside from that, everything else is going to be my opinion. One thing I will add quickly though, these are aluminum, these are composite plastic. These are built to last a lifetime. These are made to break rather than breaking something on the boat if they were to be struck by something. I don't know if these will bend. Aluminum typically will bend one way, typically not so much back the other way. So we will see how both of these turn out. Now, let's get out on the water. We just backed off of the trailer. That was uneventful, no noticeable difference. But again, we just backed off the trailer. I had no trouble backing off, everything seemed just fine, but we are on the exact same river, with the exact same boat, the exact same captain, in the exact same spot as we tested the thrust vectors. So let's give it a go. We just pulled away from the dock, surprising amount of reverse control. I was thinking that since adding the lateral thrusters had made such a difference that removing them, I was gonna be really disappointed. I can definitely feel the difference because I do not have that percentage of thrust to the side. However, the lateral thrusters only work if your wheels are turned completely in one direction, right? You get all of your reverse thrust with your little bit of lateral movement like Yamaha intended. At any other point in the wheel, these increase your reverse control substantially at all positions in the wheel. So I was not at all disappointed with, so far, just the initial thought, just backing away from the dock. Let's start heading forward, and let me turn the camera. Top speed runs are hard to film. They are hard to gauge because every time you take your boat out, the current's a little bit different, the wind is different, the conditions just change, and 1 or 2 miles an hour, sometimes as much as 3 or 4, depending on your conditions, will affect your top speed. Last time I had the boat out in similar conditions as this, I had 48 miles an hour as a top speed with the thrust vectors. I am also seeing 48 miles an hour today with the Cobra Fins. So initially, I'm going to say both have little to no effect upon top speed. Now we're gonna hit the gas, we're gonna crank the wheel all the way one way, we're gonna hit the gas, and we're gonna see what kind of spray we get up. Again, this is with the thrust vectors. Let's give it a shot. Now, even though the thrust vectors were redesigned with the skis to have less spray, especially as the jet wash was not holding them up, the skis were holding them up, I noticed as that bar passed over the jet wash, it would give me some spray as it lifted up. I also noticed when I was in no wake +3, which is the fastest no wake zone you have, if you had people in the front of the boat, oftentimes, occasionally, maybe not oftentimes, occasionally, I think that thrust vector would just kind of catch just enough, lift up and come back down, because I didn't lose any control, I didn't lose any steering, but I would see just a random of spray that would come up like as if that bar was coming up over the jet wash. Now these do not lift up, nothing will come in contact with the spray, so we're going to go ahead, hopefully from the camera angle you have, we can see. I'm going to go ahead and I am going to take off 5,500 RPMs, which is where I cruise. I'm going to hit that, so it's going to take us a little while to plane, but you will see what we get for spray in the back. what you're going to see when you're at a wakeboarder, especially a beginner wakeboarder who's going a little bit slower. That seems to be a pretty good speed for pulling them, and that is what you're going to get. And obviously, I don't have any water in the ballast bags or anything, so we don't have a huge wake, but that's about what you're going to see as far as the spray coming up. Just like we did with the thrust vectors, let's see what we look like at that 11 to 12 miles per hour, like what you would be doing, probably roughly pulling a wakeboarder or so. So you see, we are at 12 miles per hour, and there's what we have. You will probably also notice that the total jet wash at 30 miles an hour roughly is to the naked eye undifferent than they were with the thrust vectors. So as far as pulling your tuber or whatever, I think you're going to see the jet wash shooting out the same regardless of which one you choose. They seem to be, without actually putting out a rope there and measuring it visually, they look virtually identical. So not the same real thrust as with the lateral thrusters. Now there is an attachment on the bottom of these. I believe they're called fangs for the Cobra Fins. I do not have those, but a surprising amount of low speed reverse control. Go ahead and watch the background here. I'm gonna do a fairly hard reverse. I'm gonna go up to about 3,000 RPMs. There we go, that's about 3,000 RPMs. Watch in the background how much of a turn we're doing here. Now I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna back off the throttle, I'm gonna spin her around in the other way. We still have some reverse momentum going. I'm gonna go back to that 3,000, that's 35, we'll back out. There we go, about 3,000. Now we're going with and against the current. Go ahead and look, we are really, now we still got a pretty fair amount of reverse going here. But we're spinning that transom, we're spinning that rear end around here pretty good. So I am gonna go ahead, when I get back out on the other end, we're gonna head back to the yacht club. We're gonna try to do a comparison in the exact same spot as we did with the lateral thrusters, but just given that initial, a very impressive amount. So in comparison to the thrust vectors, these offer substantially more reverse control. However, when you compare them to the thrust vectors with the lateral thrusters, I'm not going to make a determination just yet, but initially I'm going to say the lateral thrusters do add a whole lot of reverse lateral control. So we don't have the, I believe they're called fangs, we don't have those on, and I wonder, I kind of wish I had those, but just the thrust vectors versus just the Cobra Fins. The Cobra Fins offer substantially more reverse control, and I'm not exactly sure why, because I mean they aren't that different from each other, but these definitely on their own compared to the thrust vectors on their own are giving you a lot more reverse lateral control. So reverse steering rather than just, you know, going straight back, that steering in reverse, but these kill it. Let's talk fuel economy. The thrust vectors are lifting up out of the water, creating virtually no drag. The Cobra Fins are leaving one of those fins in the water, potentially offering a little bit of drag. Now, I already noticed no difference in top speed. What about the fuel economy? Like I said, so again, much like top speed, weather conditions, current, that kind of stuff can affect you. I am seeing at 5,500 RPMs, which is where I normally cruise at. That's about 30 miles an hour-ish. That's where I get my best fuel economy. I typically run, depending on weather conditions, between 10.8 gallons per hour to 11.23 gallons per hour. I'm seeing, and wide open throttle is about 25.1, 25.2 gallons per hour. With the Cobra Fins, I am seeing very, very similar, maybe about 1/10 of a gallon per hour increase. But again, that is different weather conditions. Probably not enough to notice a difference. I have a relatively, it's a pretty windy day out. I'm on the river, so we don't have waves, but we have a pretty strong current. When I am going, I just tested it going into the current, and that's where I got that 1/10 of a gallon per hour So if I was doing it the other way, I might increase that a little bit. So really no difference, no noticeable difference, it doesn't seem. So I don't think that that little bit potential drag that with that one fin still in the water is really making any difference at all. Well, the sun's starting to come up now in the background, but we definitely did not beat the rain. I am soaked, the boat is soaked. We're parked underneath the tree here to try to get the rain to stop a little bit in order to get the cover on, which is also soaked. And off to the distance over here, I think it was just a passing shower. We're gonna get some sunshine again, but yeah, we did not miss the rain, unfortunately. Although I came into the dock a little bit faster than normal, but not on plane, so I'm making quite a bit of a wake. Pulled into the dock with no issues, went ahead and had all that weight kind of come up against me while I'm pulling into the dock. No issues, really. We got into the dock smooth, no issues. I got on the trailer really smooth too. So far I am very impressed, but we do have some more testing to do. All right, I've got the Cobra fins on now. I am in the exact same place at the exact same dock, only on the other side of the dock that I filmed the original video with the lateral thrusters. So we're gonna see, we've got a pretty good current coming in. I always like to park my boat with the wind pushing me into the dock, because sometimes pulling into the dock against the wind can be a little bit hard. So we're gonna have to get the gas hard and get swung out. I have poles like what you see right back here. I've got about 2 feet behind the boat, and the front of the boat is level with the pole. So as the bow turns in, I've got a little bit of room to pull forward, but not much. I've got a 24-foot boat, and I've literally got about 26 feet between these poles, and these are big concrete poles. So I've got to get out, and I got to turn to the port side hard to get around that one and not hit that one. So let's see how it goes. So we pulled out of there with no issues. Now let's head out to some open water and get a couple of tests out there. Final thoughts, which is better, thrust vectors or Cobra fins? So at the time of filming this section of the video, I have not gone through all of my footage, and so I don't know exactly what footage you have actually seen. I have over 2 hours of footage comparing these two. Obviously all of that did not make it into this film. Any claim that I make that you would like to see video footage for that I do not have, let me know in the comments, because I will make a separate video if that is advantageous to you guys, and I will show you how I came up with each conclusion. But basically, installation is easier on the thrust vectors. In addition to there being less to do without the extra steering arm, the anode bracket that comes with the thrust vectors is a complete bracket, and you bolt your anode to this and then this to the boat. On the Cobra fins, it is 2 angle brackets that are individual. You must bolt it to your anode, leaving it loose so that it will line up onto your boat, and then tighten it after the fact, and that's just a little bit harder. Also, there was the extra tie rod. Not a big deal. Both can be installed with basic skills and basic hand tools. But if we're splitting hairs here, the thrust vectors were a little bit easier to install. I felt that both lived up to their claims. Now, I have nothing bad to say about the thrust vectors. They claim to enhance low-speed steering. They absolutely do substantially increase your low-speed steering. They claim to lift up out of the water when you get up on plane, or a little bit before you get on plane. They do. They do everything that they claim to do. However, I felt like the Cobra fins did a little bit more. And so for that reason, I am going to stick with the Cobra fins. They have the advantages of steering on plane as well. Now, I didn't think I was gonna like that. I was pretty sure that I was not going to keep these based on the fact that I didn't feel I needed additional steering stability at higher speeds. I felt like it was just fine the way it was, and I thought that that extra drag in the water was going to make steering hard, and I thought that, especially for my 7-year-old, it was going to be harder for her to steer, and she was not going to like that. However, I was wrong on both cases. So when you are driving, especially in a heavy current or rough conditions, you are oftentimes, you've got your steering wheel turned maybe a quarter, maybe even half of the way, right? And you're trying to track that straight line. And the wind just kind of keeps pushing you over a little bit more and a little bit more, and you keep, you know, steering a little bit more, and you keep veering over, and then finally, like, come on, and you just crank it over, and your boat, you know, turns, right? With the Cobra Fins, I didn't have that. When I turned it a little bit more, it really did, you know, correct that little bit more. And so for that reason, I thought it was very helpful, even though I didn't think I was going to need it. And I guess you don't need it, but it was very helpful. I thought that traveling at higher speeds with especially a current or rough conditions, it helped the boat track better, and it did not affect the steering noticeably, that it was harder for her to steer and certainly not harder for me to steer. Also, the bottom has a little bit of the fin over here that is supposed to help that plane out faster. To me, that was not noticeable as far as did it plane faster? Yeah, maybe it did, I'm not sure. You'd really have to compare side by side right next to each other and in order to see that, because taking one off and then putting the other one on and going out the next day, I didn't notice a difference in it planing faster. It was kind of like, yeah, I don't know, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, I'm not sure. It definitely wasn't slower, but it tracks better at higher speeds. In addition, when you back off of the throttle and then you crank the wheel over, the thrust vectors do not offer any type of steering at that speed, and they don't claim to. But when you crank over that wheel, basically nothing happens until the boat sets back down, those thrust vectors drop down, and then your transom really swings out like it's supposed to do. However, with the Cobra Fins, if you back off the throttle and crank the wheel, your boat will turn. Your bow will physically move, and you are not going to by any means run an obstacle course with no thrust. But it is enough that you will get your boat turned a fair amount, which could be the difference between avoiding an accident. If your natural instinct is to slow down when something happens, this could be just enough to move the bow of the boat over enough that you avoid hitting something. But you do have some control, not substantial control, but some control versus no control with either the thrust vectors because they're still up in the air, or with just Yamaha's design, because without thrust you would have basically no control. So I liked that about it as well. I was very surprised that the reverse steering with the Cobra Fins was, I felt, better than what the thrust vectors were. That surprised me because you have almost double the surface area in the water. When we were going at low speeds and we were turning from one way to the next, I felt like the thrust vectors were a little bit quicker to change the direction, and that didn't surprise me because, again, double the surface area roughly that's in the water. However, in reverse, I felt like I was very surprised at the amount of control that I had in reverse, almost comparable to with the lateral thrusters, where you really have that thrust going completely lateral that helps you swing the transom over. I thought that having to remove these in order to install the Cobra Fins was going to be a deal breaker for me, and it was not. I had a very good amount of control, surprising amount of control in reverse that I was not anticipating. Now, could you run the lateral thrusters in conjunction with the Cobra Fins? Technically no, but I mean, if you got enough time and enough money, you can do anything you want, right? You would have to cut away part of them. You can see that these are shaped with the L in them, so that these, this is actually the other side, I believe, so that these go ahead and, I'll try to get this here, so that these would go ahead and reach underneath there. That is not going to happen with the Cobra Fins. You would have to start hacking away at it, and what that would do to its design and the way that it works, I'm not positive. I know that I have seen some people on YouTube who have done it and were happy with the results. I have not tried it, and I do not intend to, at least at this point, because I feel like the reverse control is very good. The most trickiest maneuver that I have ever done on a regular basis, in addition, you know, obviously you got your docking, right? And you have, sometimes you're parked at the dock and you got a boat that comes in after you, in front and behind you, and you have very limited room to get out. With the exception of things like that, pretty much every time you pull into a dock, you have a chance to back up and come at it again. When you are going through the locks, you have a 12-foot door with an 8.5-foot boat. You have less than 2 feet on either side. You have a current coming in, and you have probably a boat in front and behind you. You don't have a second chance. You got one shot to get in there, and if you miss it, you either bang into a steel door or you hit the boat in front or behind you. There is no redos on that. And I felt good control with both of them. I don't know one was necessarily better than the other. They were very comparable. In most of the low speeds, both were very comparable. Not a substantial difference in either direction, giving one an advantage over the other. The advantage that I noticed with the Cobra Fins was really at higher speeds. So if you have thrust vectors or you're going to get thrust vectors, I do not think you're going to be unhappy. I was not unhappy with mine. If you're not sure which one to get, I am sticking with the Cobra Fins for the advantages that they offer. They are comparable at low speed. I feel like they are better at higher speeds. And again, the thrust vectors don't claim to offer anything at high speed, so it's not like they don't live up to their claim. But the Cobra Fins do claim to add at higher speeds, and I feel they do live up to their claim. And for that reason, that's why I'm sticking with the thrust vectors. With the Cobra Fins. You say these both enough of times, you're gonna get them screwed up. Another thing about the Cobra Fins that I think I'm going to do, now they are aluminum, and I am going to go ahead, I think, and powder coat them red to match the boat. That is not an option that you would have with these. However, since buying these, JetBoat Pilot has come out with both red and blue ones. However, if you have a new 25-foot boat in green at the time of filming this, they do not have a green option. So if you were to want to color match these Cobra Fins could be powder coated any color, and I don't think that they would offer any disadvantage. Hopefully they don't. One thing real quick that I want to mention, when I originally put them on, I said we put the level across our jet pumps, and then we towed them in roughly 1/8 of an inch. After talking with Jeff on that, that was incorrect. Level them out and then turn your steering cable half a turn, either in or out, depending on which one you're doing, so that it tows in, which is actually going to be a tow in of about 1/16 of an inch, maybe less. It's not much. But I had to redo that. Not a big deal. I didn't really notice any difference when I changed that, but in the beginning of the video, I did mention that there was about 1/8 of an inch gap there. It was not. It's closer to 1/16, maybe a little bit less. So, any questions you have, leave them in the comments. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and thank you both to Jeff and Will for providing great products that we can count on and that give people like me a chance to review and people like you a chance to use. If you watch this channel for the first time and you haven't already, and you want to,
a boom.
please subscribe.